a lot of ads that are shown. So if you're a site selling cameras, you could advertise on Google when someone searches on cameras. Natural search is also on the same Google page. These links are not advertised links, so they're free. But of course, there's a lot of time and effort and money that you have to spend to get there in those and on that first page on Google. Paid search is a little easier, but then again, there you actually pay Google since you're an advertiser, and we'll talk about how that advertising works. Then we'll also talk about paid search, which is we'll focus it mostly around Facebook. Now, Facebook is the big part of paid social, and you can advertise on Facebook with very finely targeted audiences, and we'll talk about that a little as well. The fourth piece we won't talk about much. It's just something for you to think about, organic social. If you think about what that is, think about a business that has a Facebook page, and that page gets likes and comments, and you build up your fan base and get to all your fans through stuff that you say on your Facebook page. So that's a whole big thing. Just a quick intro here. We won't talk much about that, but we'll probably spend about 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes talking about paid search, natural search, and paid social. And then, as Ali said, we'll take questions as we go along. So here's a Google page deconstructed. Think about someone searching on gloves. Now, you'll see two types of circles there, red and green. So there are 3 red circles and 1 green. The red ones are all ads, interestingly enough. So you'll see there's a slight, if you can see my mouse, it says ad there, ad there. So these are ads. These are companies that have said, hey, we sell gloves. When someone searches on Google on the word gloves, we want our ads to show. This would typically be ad position 1. Here's ad position 2. Here's ad position 3, and here's ad position 4 on the right-hand side. Even Nordstrom, as you can see here, is advertising on gloves. These are also ads. These are called image ads, product listing ads as they're known. But again, here also you pay Google. Now, the interesting thing is, and this is very, very key to understand about paid search, is all of these guys who are advertising are not paying Google by the impression. So these ads showed up, but none of the advertisers paid Google any money. When the time the advertiser pays Google money is when someone actually clicks the ad. So the whole concept is sometimes called PPC, which is pay per click, or CPC, cost per click. And the idea there being that the advertiser pays Google or any of the other search engines. I'll use Google as by and large to represent all search engines, but just keep in mind as Yahoo and Bing as well. But Google has the biggest market share by far. And what Google does, Yahoo and Bing tend to follow. So the same concept applies on those other search engines as well. And across all of them, the key thing to know is that you are paying, as an advertiser, your company is paying Google only by the click, not by the impression. And of course, the first question is, all right, I want my ad to show higher up, because clearly ads that are up here are going to get more clicks, are going to get more, Google's going to generate more visits to your site. How do I show higher up? And there's a couple of things there. One is, if you decide, hey, you're going to pay Google $5 a click versus some other advertiser is going to pay Google only $3 a click, your ad will show higher up because you're willing to pay more per click. So it's an open auction system, if you will. And then the other thing that Google cares about a lot, and that also determines your ad position, is what's the user experience like. So if someone searches on gloves, sees an ad, clicks the ad, comes to your site, as best as Google can measure it, the user experience you provide will also be instrumental in how your ads do. So in other words, if you provide a great user experience, your ads will show higher up, and you may actually end up paying less per click. Google will reward you for providing a great user experience, and by the same token, will penalize you if the user experience you provide will not be good. And the way they penalize you is either you'll end up paying more per click, or your ad will show in a lower ad position and not get as many clicks, or most likely both. So keep that in mind. Two main things drive paid search from an optimization perspective. One is how much are you willing to pay per click? And the more you're willing to pay per click, the higher up your ad will likely show. And the other one is how good a user experience can you provide? I mean, if you are a site for gloves and you want your ad to show when someone searches on cars, that's obviously not going to be a good user experience, and your ads will get penalized for that. So that is paid search, and we have a couple of more slides where we provide a little bit more overview on paid search. This green circle here is organic search. And these are free clicks, no ads here. This is a free click. Think of it as more as PR versus advertising. But how do you get there? Number one on page one on Google when someone searches on gloves, and that itself requires a lot of time, effort, and money, even though it's not advertising, strictly speaking. All right, on paid search, the whole thing centers around keywords as well. I mean, people are ultimately searching on Google, and based on what your business is about, you want your ads to show on specific terms that people search on. So let's say in this example, you're selling ladies or women's hats, right? So you want your ad to show when someone searches on women's hats, buy women's hats, ladies' hats, buy ladies' hats, etc. And you have full flexibility on how broad you want to go in terms of what people are searching on. So the broadest you can do is something called, hey, broad match, right? So if you have a keyword, you say, look, I want my ad to show when someone searches on women's hats, and I want to go broad. Then what happens is that not only your ads will show when someone searches on women's hats, but they may search on, they will show when someone searches on buy women's hats or buy ladies' hats or ladies' hats. And sometimes if it's broad enough, your ads might even show when someone searches just on hats, right? So that's as broad as you want to go. It's not something we recommend to start with because your ads will show a lot and they may not always be relevant, right? If you're selling only women's hats, you don't want your ad to show when someone searches on men's hats. But if you go broad match, they could, and you could end up losing a lot of money as well. Now, if you want to tighten that, there is something called a broad match modifier or modified broad match, where you put the word plus before women's and the word plus before hats. What happens there is that your ads will not show for men's hats if someone searches on men's hats, because you're saying, look, I want my ad to show only when someone searches has the word women in their search string or search query as it's called, and when someone has the word hats or variants of hats in their search string. So for instance, yeah, your ads will show if someone searches on ladies' hats or hats for women, because the word lady is pretty closely related to women. So those slight variations will allow your ad to show, but at least there has to be the word women and the word hat or close variations of those two words. Then you keep getting tighter. The word phrase match or the concept of phrase match is if someone has the phrase women's hats when they're searching. So for instance, buy women's hats, your ad will show. Why? Because women's hats is part of what the user searched on when they search buy women's hats. Then you get even tighter, and this may be something to start off with, especially if you have a small budget, called an exact match, which is exactly what it means. So your ad will only show when someone searches exactly on women's hats and nothing else. And then there is a somewhat different concept of a negative match. Let's say you are not selling women's hats. In fact, you're selling all kinds of hats except women's hats. So you want your ad to show on men's hats, baseball hats, but not when someone searches on women's hats, because you're not selling women's hats in this last example. And there you put a negative on the word women to tell Google, look, I'm selling all kinds of hats, but I don't want my ad to show when someone has the word women when they search.
So Nader, we got a really good.
Ali?
Yeah, we got a really good question. It said, what type of match type should I use for long tail keywords? And so maybe you want to talk about what a long tail is, and then answer the question.
Yeah, so long tail, and I'll change the example a little bit here. Head term is something which is the opposite of long tail, is something like the word sweater. That's the opposite of long tail. It's called a head term. Right? It's very, very general, sweaters. Now, on the other hand, if you think of what the opposite of that is, something very, very specific is called a long tail, which would be something like blue, large, wool sweater. Very specific, right? Now, if you're selling blue large wool sweaters and you have a page on your site that talks about blue large wool sweaters, you should bid on that keyword because it's very specific. And if someone searches on it and they see your ad is all about blue large wool sweaters, and you take them to a page on your site that's all about blue large wool sweaters, you'll get extremely good metrics. People will be clicking your ad because it's so relevant. People will be buying from you because your page on your site is so relevant to blue large wool sweaters, and that's exactly what they searched on. The one downside of these kind of keywords, as they are called, or search terms, is a lot more people, if you think about scale, a lot more people are searching on words like sweaters. And very, very few people would search on something as specific as a blue large wool sweater. So even though that long tail may be extremely profitable, it won't have the scale. So yeah, maybe you spend only $2 and make $10 and you'll make a very nice $8 profit, but that's not high scale, even though it's a very, very good percentage in terms of profitability. So that's the trade-off, and it's a good question. It's a little bit of an advanced concept, which we aren't covering here. But the concept of long tail is very specific, very profitable, but not a lot of volume. And then of course there's ways to generate that volume by bidding or buying a lot of these long tail keywords like, hey, blue large wool sweaters, green large wool sweaters, red large wool sweaters. You can think of all these combinations. And of course, there's variations of small, medium, large, etc. as well. So then you generate a lot of keywords to fight that downside of not having scale. So that's how that would work. Now, if you're a small business with a budget, with a small budget, you could either, if you do these long tail keywords, and if you do an exact match, you probably won't get much volume at all. So you should probably try to loosen the match, maybe do something like modified broad match, so that you at least start getting some volume on these long tail keywords. On the other hand, if you do the opposite, what I call the head term, things like let's just say blue sweaters, then you want to be like either go with an exact or phrase match so that you don't end up having your ads show everywhere. Because keep in mind, I mean, it sounds like, hey, if my ads show all the time, that's a good thing. Yes, it's a good thing, but you're going to get a lot of clicks, and a lot of clicks also means a lot of money. And if they don't convert as well, you might end up losing a lot of money as well.
Yeah, so this is, it's worth spending time here because this is where a lot of people that are new to Google will lose a lot of money. If you have a specialty sweater that Nader was talking about and you advertise on the term sweater, you're going to get all the synonymous terms with sweater, right? Any kind of thick shirt type word. And you're going to get a lot of advertisers that are competing heavily there. But if you say, Afghani sweater, blue, blue Afghani sweater or something like that, a much more specific term, that's going to allow you to translate that traffic into better, higher quality clicks that is going to convert for you. So that's probably one of the key messages in this entire presentation, because a lot of online marketing is about targeting. And so you want to think very carefully about how you target your audiences.
All right, great, Ali, thanks. Here's the next slide and this is more an optimization. And this slide I know has a lot of numbers, and I won't spend a lot of time on it. But the idea here is the whole thing about online advertising, online marketing is it is very, very data focused. If you advertise on TV, you get some metrics, but you sometimes can't do much with it. But this is the kind of data, for instance, Google will provide you on a keyword level. So here's some keywords: haircut, short hairstyles, great clips, etc. That let's say if you have a let's say you have a great clips franchise, these may be some of the keywords you want to build on, just generally speaking. And the key thing is the kind of data you get for every keyword that is in your AdWords, and Google's advertising system is called AdWords. So it will tell you, for instance, how many clicks you got on those keywords, how often your ad actually showed, and then of course the click-through rate is the number of clicks divided by the number of impressions. And the average CPC here is the average cost per click. So you get, by the keyword, how much are you paying Google for every click, for every time someone comes to your website. And then there are some other metrics like average ad position. Now, if you're an e-commerce site and you have, let's say you're selling watches, and every time someone buys from you, that registers as a conversion. So now you can see which keywords, converted clicks means people who searched on those keywords, clicked and came to your site and bought from you, is a converted click. So now you start, and here there's all zeros because this isn't an e-commerce site. But the idea is, when someone searches, comes to your site and does something you want them to do, uh, and typically in an e-commerce world, it's buys from your website. You get information as to how much by the keyword at a keyword level, how much you're paying Google in terms of advertising costs every time someone buys from you. And you can use all that. So you might say, okay, why do I care, right? And the idea is to use this data to adjust your bids. So here you see this max CPC, everything is set at $2. You might say, some keywords are extremely profitable for me, and there I'm willing to pay $3 a click. And other keywords are extremely, they're losing me money even though they may be generating revenues, but I'm paying too much in advertising costs. And there you could lower your bid to $1 a click, because these numbers, how much you're willing to pay Google per click, is completely determined by you at a keyword level. Now you might say, hey, all right, that's great. I'm just going to put 1 cent. The problem with 1 cent is it's an auction system, as we had talked about earlier. And if everyone else, if all your competition is bidding higher, willing to pay Google more per click, your ad may not show at all. So it's a very, very interesting trade-off. But you have all the numbers here to try and figure out how much you're willing to pay per click for every keyword in your system.
And we got a really good question.
Yeah, we're going to take a question break anyway, because now we're moving on from paid search. So we should probably take some overall paid search questions. I know we did just a quick overview, and there's a lot more details, but let's entertain some questions now.
Yeah, and just housekeeping here, we will be sharing this PowerPoint deck online, so you don't need to worry about taking notes. And you can ask questions by clicking on that little question arrow on your screen and typing in a question to us, and we'll be able to see the question and then answer them. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible. So we got a couple of good questions on data analysis. One is, how do we determine ROI, or is there a typical ROI on an AdWords engagement? So Nader, I don't know if you want to talk.
I'm going to go back to this slide. So here's, yes, you can. You have to know your own business well to figure out the back-end metrics of what it all means. So let me stick to the e-commerce example. You're selling watches, right? And you see, and Google will at a keyword level will tell you that, look, for every time someone buys a watch, you're giving me in this case being Google, $20 in advertising costs. And for $20, I am enabling you to sell a watch. Now, is that profitable? Well, it depends. If you're selling a watch for $10, that's clearly not profitable, and you'd want to reduce, you can't afford to pay $2 a click, let's say, as in this example. On the other hand, if you're selling a watch for $100, then the next question you have to ask is, okay, I'm getting $100 of revenue. What is my own cost of that watch? Because the watch is not free to you, right? It costs you some money, manufacturing costs, or you're buying it from someone else or whatever. Let's say the watch costs you $40. You're getting $100, plus you're paying Google $20 every time you sell a watch. Now you're not paying Google by the sale. You backtrack into it given all the metrics you have on this screen here. And then you say, all right, I'm making money on this. That's great. I have a positive ROI. My two main costs are my manufacturing cost and my advertising cost, and my revenues exceed that, so I'm making a profit. Now, keep in mind one thing, and it will depend on your business as well, that this ROI measurement is only based on the first transaction. Because not only you sold a watch, you also gained a customer. Now, people may not be buying watches every month, and so that's the reality of that business. But if you are in a business where there's repeat sales that, let's say you're selling vitamins, and people are going to be buying vitamins every month, then yeah, maybe you lose money on that first sale once you take your advertising costs into account. But people are going to be buying every month potentially, or at least some percentage of them will. And then you have to think about, okay, is this making me money over a year-long period? Because I, in my first transaction, I actually lost money because my advertising costs were too high. But maybe I made money when I think of it over a year period, because some people will buy from me every 12 months or every month for 12 months. So you have to know your back-end business a bit, but once you know that, you can put that together with what Google gives you and figure out what your ROI is and how much you should be paying Google every time they send a visitor to your website.
And we had a few questions on CPC costs, ROI, and then specific to industry. So people are asking, well, how much should I really bid? And maybe you want to talk about specific analysis for specific businesses, because it really does vary, right? A software product, $20 a click, would be, not unheard of, even $50.
Right.
If you're selling, dollar store type items, you might be bidding, much less than $1, right? So,
Yep.
like not saying, make sure you know your gross margin, right? So your cost per product in the e-commerce example. Make sure you factor in your shipping costs, your credit card costs, as well as returns, right? And then you want to factor in how many clicks can I buy at what amount and still make money, right? If you want to at least break even on that one product sale. And then you can think about, well, even if I don't make money or I lose a little bit, what's that customer worth? So there's a lot of background research that needs to be done, and that can be done in what's called a keyword tool, the Google keyword tool. And then you have to do a bunch of math on your own product, because every product is different. There's no way to say cost per click should be X or Y. You really do need to be very specific about your specific product, and the tools only get you so far. Then there'll be some experimentation, but you should definitely know your math before you embark on this path.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing to realize is that you are bidding in a competitive environment. So you are, because Google has only shows 8, 10 ads on the page. It depends on what your other competition is bidding. If they're all bidding on $2 and you have $3, great. And if that's profitable to you, you get scale, you get profitability, right? But on the other hand, if your business is such that, look, I can, after you look at all the metrics, what's called conversion rates and things like that, you say, look, I can only bid $1. Fine, bid $1. If your competition is bidding higher, all right, you don't lose money. What happens is that you don't get volume because maybe their ads are more prominent than yours. So work out the metrics like Ali is saying. Go towards the right bids, and then maybe you'll get more volume, maybe you won't, and you have to keep adjusting. By the way, one thing I want to add, the thing about ROI for e-commerce sites and even for lead gen sites, right? If you own a salon and all, is a vast field in and of itself. And this set of slides and this presentation today is a little bit of an overview rather than going into detail. But if there is general interest, I think we could certainly follow it up with more webinars where we go deeper into specific areas. And ROI is a great example. So just keep us informed on what you might be interested in for future webinars, and we'll certainly try and follow up with that. All right, I'm moving now on to organic search. You remember, these are not advertising. So in paid search, you were getting onto Google's page one rather easily and quickly. The downside was you were paying Google every time someone clicked and came to your site. Here, you're still getting onto Google's page one rather quickly for keywords that are interesting to you when people search on gloves or women's hats or whatever it is that you might be selling. You're still showing up on page one, and even better, when someone clicks on your link and comes to your website, you don't pay Google a dime. So what's the downside? Well, there's a few problems. One is, how do you get there, right? How do you get there on page one, and how long does it take, and what do you need to do? So clicks are free, and links are even more likely to get clicked than paid search because they're not ads, and people think they're much more real, and there's real value here. Although this varies. Like if I'm looking to buy something, I don't mind clicking ads because I know that's what the company is selling and I'm looking to buy it. But nevertheless, keep in mind that these organic links are highly valuable. They're free in terms of click. The question is, there are downsides there because it can take months to get there because everyone wants to be there. These are free clicks. Everyone wants to be there, and so you need to spend time, money, and effort to get there. And it's not money you give to Google; it's money you do to get your site there. You pay web developers, you pay SEO folks, consulting companies to get there. And we'll talk about some of the things that you should be doing uh, to enable that page one ranking. And the other thing to keep in mind, which is the last sub bullet here, is that whereas in paid search, you tell Google exactly what keyword you want to show on uh, men's watches or women's hats, and you completely determine what you want to show in the ad copy on Google, which is the copy on Google which someone clicks and comes to your site. And you completely determine as well what page to land the user on. So all of these are within your control in paid search. In organic search, because Google is doing everything in an automated fashion, you have less control. I mean, it's Google will decide what keywords to show your site on. It will figure out based on the content on your site what to show on google.com. I have ad copy in quotes because it's not really ad copy. It's stuff that Google pulls from your site. Then Google will determine in organic search where to take the user on your site as well. So that's another downside that you don't have as much flexibility, but everything else is positive as long as you can get there. So think of it from Google's perspective. Google wants to and has always been from day one, and that's what got them the fame that they got. They've always been about providing a great user experience. They actually don't even care that much about advertisers because even though you would think, hey, advertisers are Google's clients, I mean, they're Google. But Google is like, if I can provide a great user experience and the users come and search on Google, then the businesses will want to be there. And that has worked for them. And so their primary focus is how do I rank sites? How does Google rank sites that provide a great user experience? And that starts with unique content, valuable content. If you want to rank in organic search and you want to rank on certain keywords, the first thing to do is provide unique and extremely valuable content around those searches. If someone searches on women's hats, well, you have to have a lot of really good content about women's hats for that page to rank.
Yeah, and just a note here, Nader, because I had a few questions about service businesses. The principles here are exactly the same. So if we have a cleaning business, then our example might be around keywords relevant to cleaning business. So cleaning business in Atlanta or janitorial services in Atlanta, you would do your keyword research similarly. And then you would think from an SEO perspective, well, how do I rank my site on that particular topic? So again, unique content, and if you can get people to link to you. It's the same concepts. We just use the hats example because it's easy and everyone can understand it. But there's no difference in terms of using Google's tools. You just have to think through the process a little bit differently from a keyword perspective and from a cost perspective, because service businesses obviously have very different types of margins. And the conversion you're getting is not shipping a product, but rather a phone call to your business. That's a lead, and a certain number of those phone calls or emails or leads are going to convert into an actual customer. So you need to know what a customer is worth to you and how much you want to bid on Google or invest in SEO.
Yeah, and I think just to build on that, how does Google recognize great content, right? I mean, so you have some great content on your site, and you're like, how do I tell Google I have great content? Well, there's multiple ways, but two main ways. One is Google's bots, as they are called. Essentially, the software comes to your site, analyzes the content, and tries and figure out how useful, how unique, how valuable that content is. It actually has very, very sophisticated algorithms to try and figure out how valuable the content is. The other thing that Google looks at, and this is point number 2 here on this slide, is it looks for incoming links. If you have great content, what happens is quite likely few people find it at some point and then they say, wow, let me link to it. I have a site, I'm going to link to it because this is great content. So that incoming link, especially from trusted sites, is a strong signal to Google that this is great content and I should rank it. And a lot of SEO has focused traditionally on generating those links. But you have to be careful. If you go down that path, just make sure you're getting high quality links from trusted sites. And if you do that, and if you have great content, it makes it so much easier to rank well on Google for the keywords that you're interested in. All right, so showing up on the first page is very important, but what is missing? And the idea is someone may come and tell you, hey, I can rank your site in 3 days on page one. And you might say, all right, how? And they might end up doing it. But what you have to ask yourself, and this was Ali was saying earlier, is, well, my site's ranking, but is this on a keyword that is about my business? Because if it's ranking on some random keyword that no one searches on, who cares? Yeah, I'm on page one, but no one's even searching on that keyword, and or it's not relevant to my business. Well, then that's not very meaningful or useful, and it's not going to do much for your business. So keep that in mind. And Ali mentioned the Google. There's a list of tools that are on the last slide of this presentation. And one of them is, and the reason I mention it is because it's free. You have to get an AdWords account, which is a Google paid search account, but you don't have to spend any money in advertising. And you get access to that keyword tool, which allows you to do a lot of research on which keywords you should rank on. And the thing that some of the stuff that keyword tool will tell you is how many people are searching, right? A keyword may be very relevant to your business, but if no one's searching on it, well, then maybe it's not that useful. And then the other thing might also tell you how competitive that keyword is. Ideally, you want to rank on keywords that are relevant to your business, that a lot of people are searching on, and yet it is relatively easy to rank for those because not everyone wants to rank for those. So those are some of the parameters you want to look at when you go down the path of keyword research. Then after selecting the keywords, after you do your research, the one thing, and we talked about this a bit, that you have to do to rank well is develop great content, and I call it here tailored on-site content. Very, very valuable, very, very unique, and Google loves that content, and maybe other people love it as well and start linking to you, and then you start ranking. So that again it starts off with developing great content. And then the other piece is, and we talked about this as well a bit, that once you develop the great content, hopefully people will start linking. That link acts as a signal, and that signal will rank your rank file. Now here are some keywords. By the way, I feel like I'm echoing a bit. I'm not sure if others feel the same way. I just want to make sure that everyone can hear clearly.
Yeah, no, you sound fine. I got a good question though. Just talking about how much content you should have on a page. What should the content word count be? And in general, this is one of the biggest flaws we see with any website. Sometimes the website's really pretty, it looks great, very interactive, or not. But oftentimes, what's neglected is the amount of text on the page and individual pages. And what we're talking about when we say content is unique content you've written for your website, and it should be at least 500 words on the home page and 250 words on other pages is what we generally advise. But you can always do more, or where it makes sense, do more. In terms of using other tools, there are advanced tagging, etc. I would really think of Google as looking at the web from the perspective of the user, and what does the user see. And in particular, for Google, their algorithms are built off of written content, text content. And so if you have to invest time, always invest in what's easiest for the Google crawler to pick up and what people will actually read and see, and that is written text. Now, a little tip here, if you don't want a lot of text in the top part of your page and you want to kind of below the fold, you can absolutely add text lower down on the page. Google will still read it. The crawler will still read that text and understand what you're talking about and what your website's about. but your users can still experience all of the nice flash or pictures or what have you, and so you can get a very nice experience without screwing it up with a lot of text. And so that's a nice kind of happy medium for some folks. So when we talk about content, the friendliest content to Google is really text.
Yep, thanks, Ali. So here's a few tools that you can use, and these tools are again repeated on the last slide of this deck. And as Ali said, the keyword research, Google keyword tool is free, is another tool that you quite often, or wordtracker.com. There's a concept that is enough to start with. Moz.com is another set of tools. It's not free. It starts at $99 a month, which isn't too expensive, and it gives you a lot of information around SEO for both your site and your competitor sites as well. So you get a lot of competitive intelligence if you're doing organic search. And then the SEMrush, which gives you information for paid advertising as well, paid Google advertising on what your competition is doing. There's another one called spyfu.com, which is again on the last slide of this deck. So here are some of the tools, some of the resources that you could use to get started. Now, once you feel that your site is at a level that you want Google to crawl it, now Google ideally says, look, I want to be able to find your site. You don't even have to tell me to come and to your site, because if you're getting link backs, then Google will follow those links and find your site. But if you want to be extra safe, that hey, I want to make sure that Google knows my site even exists, then you can submit to all the search engines, Google, Yahoo, Bing. Just make sure that you submit your site only once. Don't keep doing it, because actually that tends to piss them off. But feel free to do it once you feel your site is ready and that you now want the search engines to come and index it, if they haven't already sent the crawlers to your site. And here are the URLs. Again, you get these slides. You just go to these URLs, Google, and then you put in, I mean, some of them require a login. Most of us have Google login, even something as simple as a Gmail. And then you say, okay, come index my site, and they'll ask you for the URL of your home page. All right, we are moving on. Go ahead. Any questions?
One last resource. Any questions? Yeah, so a couple of resources on SEO, because I just got a question on that. The one I like, obviously Moz is fantastic. Everyone uses that. Matt Cutts is from Google, and you just have to type in Matt Cutts and your question, and he's usually commented on it. And that's a great resource because that's straight from Google, which is primarily where most of your sales are going to come from in search marketing. And so he's a great guy to comment on that. And then there's a free toolbar that I use that actually it gives you access to a bunch of other services, and a lot of those services are free if you use the toolbar, or there's some kind of freemium version of a variety of services on that toolbar. So if you go to SEO book, if you type in SEO book into Google, you'll come up with that site, and they have free toolbars there. So those are some basic resources you can use on SEO.
All right, thanks, Ali. All right, so now we'll move on. So far, when we talked about organic search so far, it's all been around if you want your site to show up nationally in the US or even in the world, right, regardless of where someone searches for. But you might say, look, I'm a plumber sitting in San Francisco. I really would like to do well in organic search if the user is in San Francisco. If they're sitting in New York, I really don't care if my site shows up, right, because they're not going to call me from New York. I mean, I'm sitting in San Francisco. So the next couple of slides focus on what's called local SEO or local search. And there, the same concepts carry over. You have to have unique, valuable content. You have to have links coming into your site to give to Google the signal that this is great content. But then you have to do a bit more. You have to convince Google that you're a viable local business in your area. So then there are some things you can do, and Google knows that you're doing this because its crawlers or bots come to your website and see the content on your website, right? So have a very prominent local phone number and physical address, and if possible on every page. That's a very strong indication that you're a local business, and the physical address will tell Google exactly where you are. And when I say Google again, I mean Yahoo and Bing as well. The same concepts carry to the other search engines as well. Local phone number format should be very clean. Make sure it's text and readable. Sometimes people have phone numbers as an image because it makes a phone number look better. There's a trade-off there. Google may not be able to figure out that you have a phone number because it's an image, although they do a pretty good job now at being able to even read images. And then do not use a PO box. And this is one of those things where if you have a PO box, then it takes away from the credibility that you have a real local business, because a PO box is not a physical address. So keep this in mind. And then again, keep things clean. Do not list multiple businesses with the same address or phone number. That again becomes like, well, Google will start suspecting what's going on here. Is this a real business, or is there something else going on here? And then on the contact us page, even if you can include things like driving directions, hours of operations, weekend hours, all of these are signal to Google, if you think about it, when the crawlers come to your site, that this is a real viable local business.
And now that we got a good question here, it says, for local businesses, is it a good idea to list all the zip codes at the bottom of the site to target an audience in an area I am interested in or targeting?
So if I understand the question correctly, is it like multiple, if you have a business that is separate business in multiple different zip codes?
No. So I think what they're saying is, hey, I own a dry cleaning shop in Buckhead, but there's surrounding areas to Buckhead. People come down that highway and they can pop into my plaza and drop off their clothes. So I want to target them. So should I throw a bunch of zip codes in the bottom of my page just to make sure I get picked up? Is that a good idea now?
Okay. Yeah. So great question. I have there's two answers there. In paid search, and I'll go back to paid search and come back to local in a sec. You determine the area that so Google's paid search in AdWords, and Yahoo and Bing has something similar. You actually can tell Google the radius. You can put in a zip code or a city center and tell Google exactly the radius you want to target in. So it might be, this is where my business is, but if anyone is within 25 miles, I want my ads to show. So you have, again, a lot of flexibility there. Now, if you're doing local SEO, then Google will decide. I mean, by and large, you give Google all the right signals and say, look, this is where I am. And Google will decide based on your business, based on what it knows, who to show not the ads in this case, but who to show the local SEO link to. It is more likely to show that link to someone who may be only 1 mile from where your business is versus someone who's 25 miles. Now, it may be relevant to someone who's 25 miles away, but then you're competing with a much wider base of businesses, and you may not rank as well versus someone who's really close to your business. But if you have only one business, then just have one address, one zip code. If you enter more zip codes, you may actually end up confusing Google, because it will decide who to show that local link to, even while you're not advertising. Of course, when you're advertising, you get a lot more flexibility.
Yeah, so I have a friend, and she practices, she's a healthcare practitioner. She practices on the other side of the bay. And I Googled, I was Googling around for myself, and I found her name. Now she's, so far away that, it doesn't make sense for me to ever visit her practice. And so what's happening is people are dropping their ads into Google and they're saying, hey, Atlanta area or Dallas area zip codes, and they're dropping all the zip codes in. But they're advertising to people that will almost never drive over to your store. And so it's a great way to lose a lot of money on wasted clicks, but also your quality score will go down because no one will click on your ad. If you're advertising in one area of Dallas and northeast side or something, and you're really in the center of Dallas, no one's going to click on that ad. So Google will see that ad as irrelevant, and you're going to get penalized. So it'll hurt you in two ways. So it's much better to be targeted, and especially if you have a local business, you want local people to know about you. And so doing a little bit of Google AdWords is probably smart, but very, very targeted. And then there are a lot of free ways to get seen on the internet that should be highly leveraged.
Yep, thanks a lot, Ali. So moving away from Google, when you're a local business, these days you can't ignore Yelp, right? I mean, and there's a bunch of these guys, but Yelp is the biggest. Yelp.com can give you direct traffic because a lot of people go to Yelp to figure out, hey, what kind of a business is this? What kind of reviews does this business have? And then even outside of the people who go directly to Yelp, Yelp itself ranks well on Google for a lot of these things. So if someone searches on dry cleaner, on Google, Yelp may be a very prominent site, and then that user would probably go to Yelp. So don't ignore Yelp. It's an important piece in the equation for local businesses. And the idea there would be to use Yelp to facilitate reviews. And of course, you want to try and get good reviews, right? I mean, all other things being equal, good reviews are good. So try and do that. That will help you on Yelp, but that Google will also be able to read those reviews and will be able to say, aha, this person has a lot of reviews. It's obviously a well-known business. It's a viable business. And look, most of these reviews are good reviews, so I should be ranking the site high up. And then, as I said, we won't talk a lot in these sort of slides on organic social, but just something to keep in mind that if you are Andy's Plumbing, just making this up, right? Andy's Plumbing. Well, just make sure you own that facebook.com/Andy's Plumbing, because at some point you may want to start thinking about a Facebook page, a Twitter account, and and to claim that brand on all of these sites now is good because anyone can claim it. And then if someone else gets to social sites before you do with your business name, you may have a really hard time getting it unless you have copyright or whatever. So just try and get your business, get your business name on all of these sites, even if you don't do much to begin with.
Yeah, and just one quick comment here. This is really important, and I think a lot of our audience has a local business. I had my dentist moved literally one building over, and I couldn't find him. So he hadn't even, never mind had a website of his own, even if he didn't have a website of his own, but he just put his name and the fact that he was a dentist on one of the social media sites, whether it's Yelp, LinkedIn, Facebook, even Twitter, and talked about his new practice, I would have been able to find him. But instead, I was calling his old practice and even the practice before the one that he was at, so 2 practices ago, and he was literally next door to where he used to be, and I just couldn't find him. And I thought, this is a classic example of what a small business owner does as a mistake. It's literally a 20-minute investment to throw up some details about you. And then now that we had a really good question, it's about showing up on the Google map, right? How does that happen?
Yeah, Google decides that. So let me do this slide, and I'm going to come back to that question. Here's some of these links where for local businesses you can submit your local business. Yahoo charges a little bit, and now Yahoo has outsourced this to another site. But if you use this link, it will redirect you. Now, once you have your business listings on all of these sites, Google will determine so it's interesting. If someone does a search, the Google's algorithm determines that is this person looking for a local business or not. I mean, a key thing is if someone searches on plumbing San Francisco, well, then Google's algorithm has a pretty easy job saying, aha, this person is looking for a local business. And if Google has all the information on your local business, including your address and all, it will potentially, it's not guaranteed, right, but it will potentially show that local business on a map as well, and it's a free listing because it's organic search, it's not paid search. So to answer that question specifically, you don't have to worry about maps specifically. Just make sure that you have submitted your local business to Google, and you may need to get a Google Plus account as well. They've gone back and forth on that, but the idea is start going to these links, submit your local business, and once Google has your physical address and all, it will figure out whether to show your business on a map or not based on how relevant it may be to the search.
Hey, we got a really good question here. It says a lot of reviews in Yelp get unrecommended, meaning I think what they mean is that it's not recommending your service. If you pay Yelp for the monthly advertisement service, does the chances of a review staying, is that better? So can you influence reviews if you pay Yelp? I think that's what that question is asking. I think it's a really good question.
Yeah, Unfortunately, Yelp has been sued for this, and they've gone back and forth. The answer is yes, but it's a little subtle. Um, and it's unfortunate because it feels like blackmail, right? Hey, I've got some bad reviews on Yelp, and now Yelp is asking me to advertise, right? So Yelp would obviously get sued if they were to start taking money to remove bad reviews. That is clearly illegal. But what they do is they can suppress those bad reviews. In other words, if you're now advertising, those reviews, even though they exist, can get pushed down and may not show up as often. So the short answer is yes. If you've got bad reviews and if you advertise on Yelp, chances are less that someone will see those bad reviews versus if you don't advertise. It's a little bit unfortunate because it seems like a little blackmail, and there's been some legal cases around it, and this is also ever evolving. So it may not always work, but quite often it will.
So, hey, Nader, I got another good question. What's a good number of reviews?
It depends on your business and on your competition. So I don't know the answer offhand to that. A lot will depend on your business. But look at it this way. If you have 10 reviews and all your competition has 2 reviews, that's great, right? That's great. You'll get ranked, especially if those reviews are good. On the other hand, if you have 10 reviews and all your competition has 100 reviews, that's bad. You won't get ranked. So it really, because it's a zero-sum game in some sense, right? Every time you get ranked, someone else doesn't. The idea is not so much what are the absolute number of reviews, but what are the relative reviews that you are getting in terms of number relative to your competition. All right. So now we are going to move to the last piece of the presentation, and I think we've got about 5 slides on this around Facebook advertising. This is paid social, not organic social. It's again, and by the way, one thing I should add, Google, Yahoo, Bing, Facebook, the beautiful thing is that there is no minimum budgets. You can literally start on Google or Facebook for $5 a day, right? Now, you won't get a lot of traffic for $5 a day, but you can get in the game, right? If you have $5,000 a day, you will not only you'll get a lot of traffic as well. But the key thing is, like, you can't do a TV ad for $5 a day, right? There's no way. But in these kind of advertising, the minimum budgets tend to be very, very small, Facebook included. So if you want to go outside of search, we'll go through these slides quickly. They're just there for you to refer to. You start advertising on Facebook. You can see a bunch of things you can do. And if you have a website, what you probably want to do is this one: send people to your website. If you have a Facebook page, fine, you can promote it. You can get app installs, all of this. But let's just keep it simple and say, I have a website. I want to use Facebook advertising to send people to my website. Then, and here are some of the key things on what kind of targeting you can use. You can say, I want my ad to show to people everywhere in the US. You can make it local. You can say, I want my ads to show only to people in San Francisco who might be on Facebook. You can do demographic targeting. Remember, if you have a Facebook account, you've given Facebook all this information, which now Facebook exposes to advertisers who can then target you on this information. You can tell Facebook, hey, I want to show my ads to people who are, in this example, 18 to 65. You can tell Facebook, I want my ads to show to only men or women. Language will usually be English, but you have that option as well. Then you can also tell Facebook, hey, I want to also target my ads to certain audiences. Hey, if you have a restaurant, you may tell Facebook, I want to show my ad to only people who are interested in food and drink, right? And by the way, it's not shown here, but you can get even more fine than this, right? If you click this plus sign, you may see things like Chinese food or Thai food or American food, right? You can go very, very granular in your targeting. Now, this sounds great, and it is to some extent, because you can say, I want my ad to show to people only who are interested in Chinese food in San Francisco, and you can then, in your ad copy, actually say that, hey, I have a Chinese restaurant in San Francisco. Great. I mean, you're showing your ads to people who are interested in that, and that's what you're saying in your ad copy. The downside is you won't get a lot of scale. I mean, how many people? Ali, is there a question?
Yeah, no, I thought it might be interesting to, and I don't want to interrupt you, but I thought it'd be interesting to talk about, a smoke shop, convenience store, dollar store versus other types of businesses as
Yeah.
well. And maybe that can frame how you talk about Facebook.
Yeah, so so if you have a local business and let's look at a convenience store, that might be a little bit more difficult in terms of all of this targeting, but there may be something there because one of the things is you can get more and more fine in your targeting if you click these plus signs. It will go deeper and deeper into the granularity. The more granular you get, you may hit upon something that speaks exactly to who you want to show your ad to, including convenience stores. I don't know what they might be interested in that might say, aha, this is the target group I want to go after. But the finer you get, the big downside is the smaller the audience gets. Now, that may not be a big problem because the smaller the audience gets, uh, you can pay Facebook by the impression. In Facebook's case, you can also pay Facebook by the impression, number of times someone sees your ad, or you can also choose to pay Facebook only when someone clicks your ad. So again, if the audience is very small, then you're not going to pay Facebook a lot of money because there'll be less impressions and clicks. The problem is that, okay, fine, you got 7 clicks in the day, you spent only $10. You didn't lose a lot of money, but then again, you didn't get a lot of business either. You got only 7 clicks a day. So that's the one side of very finely targeting your Facebook audiences, is that you don't get a lot of scale. Now, in terms of the kind of business you may have, you have to just think about what kind of interests you want to go after.
So yeah, so I think think about your business and think how social is my business. So, are people going to talk about my business and how much they love my convenience store? Maybe not, right? Maybe Facebook's a place I put up a placeholder page. I might post something there. I don't know if I would spend money on Facebook ads. On the other hand, if I have a, specialty pastry store in San Francisco where there's a lot of foodies, then you know what? I probably would promote my product on Facebook very actively, right? And I would, want to reward users for referring friends, and I'd maybe do coupons, and I would do, try to get more likes. I'd be pretty active on Facebook. So I really encourage everyone because I've, spent a lot of time on businesses that aren't social in nature. And so I know people don't want to talk about certain types of businesses, right? I mean, the business I'm talking about is, psychiatry and counseling. And in that case, people aren't talking about their favorite shrink, right? It's not a social product. So really think about your business. Think about whether people are really going to be discussing your business, and do they discuss similar types of businesses that they like? And are there groups that you think you can really target? One of my friends has done really well targeting people with specific diseases because there are associations around those disease states. And the funny thing is, or the ironic thing is, to target them using Google would be very difficult, but because there are small clusters of people on Facebook, you can really target those people wherever they are. And so he's able to reach really small groups that are geographically dispersed. So think about how to target your audience. Think about whether they're going to talk about your product, or how you want to reach them, and then think about whether Facebook makes sense as a channel for you.
Yeah, and I think there are some great examples. May not work always. Think about if you're a high-end photographer, and you do wedding photographs, right? And you can target people on Facebook who have just got engaged because you know what? People change their status. On Facebook, they just might say, I went from single to being engaged. And you can target exactly that audience that just got engaged. And it may be just the right audience if you're a high-end photographer, right? So you have to think a little bit outside the box, but you get these very fine levels of targeting you can do because Facebook has so much information on its users. The other type of targeting you can also do on Facebook is behaviors, which is close to interests but slightly different. It's what are people consuming, not what they said they're interested in, but what are they consuming? What kind of content are they consuming? If you're a financial services consultant or advisor, there's a whole section here called financial, right? And this has subsections as well. So you can again use this to do very, very finely targeted audiences with ads that are very specific to that audience based on your business. Again, keep in mind that the more finely you target this audience, it may work out well, but you may lose scale. It's one of those things, very similar to long tail keywords. Long tail keywords can be extremely profitable, but they may not be scale in there. Same thing here. If you do a very finely targeted audience, you may be very profitable because you're speaking exactly to the people you want, and it's saying exactly what you want to say in the ads. But then again, you may lose scale, so you have to go after a lot of these finely targeted audiences to try and get scale. Budgets and bidding. So again, you can decide to pay Facebook by the click, similar to Google. You can also, in Facebook's case, unlike Google's case, you can also tell Facebook, I want to pay 1 cent every time someone sees my ad, or maybe $1 every time someone clicks my ad. So you have these different ways you can decide to pay Facebook, totally up to you. Again, you can have a very small minimum budget. It can be as low as, in the example here, I have $35. I think it can go down to as low as $5 daily budget, and you don't even have to spend that. You can pause your ads anytime you want, so you have a lot of flexibility if you want to start out slow. You can Other thing you can do is start scheduling your ads. If you're a 9 to 5, and you can do this on Google as well, by the way. If you're advertising, you're a 9 to 5 business, you may say I want my ads to show only between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. If that's what you want, you have that option. um,
Nada, do you want to comment on B2B versus B2C? I've got a bunch of questions on that topic, and I think Facebook probably skews more B2C, but maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yes. So Facebook, it depends on your business, but absolutely right, Ali. Facebook skews more B2C. I mean, if you think about the audience on Facebook, it's everyone. And by definition, most people are consumers. I mean, I'm a consumer. I don't have a small business. So it is definitely skews B2C. There are some cases where B2B can work. You have to think about your audience and how you target them. However, if you're really very, very B2B focused, even though we're not covering it today, think about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a B2B. If Facebook is B2C, LinkedIn is B2B, and LinkedIn also has they make their money through advertising as well. And there you can target specific companies who may be your clients. You can target by title. So you might say, I want to go after this set of companies, and I want to go after all VP of marketings, or I want my ad to show to only CEOs based on job title, etc., based on company size. So if you are B2B, play around with LinkedIn. It's very similar concepts where the minimums are very low. You can decide to pay LinkedIn by every time someone clicks your ad. Although there is a minimum on the click on the CPC, the last time I checked, it was about $2. It may have increased. So it's not a huge amount every time someone clicks your ad on LinkedIn. But B2B, definitely think about LinkedIn, and it's a much better place to start than Facebook.
Yeah, now the caution here is, we're talking here essentially about display ads. Display ads, you might want to think about now and talk about what the average number of clicks you expect to get or impressions. But in general, you need a lot of scale. So if you have a niche offering, chances are these channels are not going to be effective for you. And you can spend a lot of time tinkering around and really not be very effective or get very far. Although, setup is once and then you're kind of done, you just tweak. But I would really caution folks, if they have a specific B2B market, someone was selling printed circuit boards, right? And they have a very specific market. I mean, unless you can find the right job title in LinkedIn that is very specific to that product, chances are you will have too diffuse a group, say engineers, and you won't be relevant. And so you'll have a lot of impressions that are just not relevant. And you also won't get a lot of clicks. And so it's a little bit frustrating. So these display ads are great if you have broadly applicable products, and I tease neither. At Shutterfly, it makes a ton of sense for them to be on Facebook and to use Facebook. It's a very social product. Everyone uses photography and should be ordering photos or could be ordering photos. That's a great example of a good use case. Not so good necessarily in specific niche B2B markets where you really have a tough time targeting people.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right, Ali. The scale is the challenge there. That hey, and if you're a niche local B2B, it's even harder, right? You can't even target to all the whole country. But I think in these niche businesses, you likely won't get scale. The thing is to keep in mind as well that it's not like you're going to lose $10,000 and get no scale. You lose $10 and get no scale because if you're paying by the click, let's say, and both Facebook and LinkedIn allow that, then yeah, you won't get scale, but you won't lose money either. So if you want to take the time and take the risk of spending the time to set up these ad campaigns on Facebook or LinkedIn, you can. You're not risking a lot of downside except your time. And if you don't get the scale, then you don't lose money, but just don't get disappointed either. Just go in with expectations that look, I don't know whether I'm going to get scale. I'm just going to try this. All right, so this is the last slide. We had 20 slides. We're on slide 19, and then the next slide is just resources, blogs, tools, etc. And this is just wrapping up on Facebook advertising. You can Facebook allows you when you put your ad, you can have a headline, a text, which is a description of your ad. You can have what's called a call to action button. Maybe you say something like buy now, whatever, right? I mean, probably not the best example, but when someone clicks that button, they come over to your site. If you're an e-commerce site, great. You've got some advanced options. You can also decide where you want your ad to show. Those us who are on Facebook, we see some ads now in newsfeed as we are scrolling down in our newsfeed. That's advertisers who are actually paying Facebook. And then there is also the desktop right column, which is people on their desktop where the ads are running on the right hand side. And then there's Facebook's own audience network as well. So you have all these options to do advertising on Facebook. You can make this title and headline very, very specific as based on your audience, right? So the example was if you're targeting Chinese restaurants in San Francisco, you could say in your headline, Chinese restaurant in San Francisco, and then talk a little bit about the food in the description. So you can do very, very good kind of ads targeting the audience you have. So that's it. We can take some more questions on Facebook as well, or just make it open to more general questions. And I'll just move over to the last slide, which is some of the tools that we have.
Yeah, I had a good question here. It says, can we recommend someone to help with digital marketing for a professional who doesn't necessarily have the time, and they would pay them, but how do you find a professional that is competent, knows what they're doing, and can be helpful, in the case where a business owner doesn't have the time to take this up? Maybe a follow-on is there are a lot of services out there, so maybe Nader, if you want to comment on that, I know you've thought a lot about this.
Right. So there is, and it depends on your budgets, but there are a lot of agencies. They're called now, typically in the old world they were just called agencies. Now they're called digital marketing agencies that will help you. But it will depend on your budget. You could go to an agency, and you can even search on Google things like, and I'll talk about some specifics, but even search on Google for AdWords agencies. I mean, a lot of these are companies and they're advertising themselves on Google. So if you just search, you'll get a lot of them. If they want it, if your budgets are big, if they feel they can make at least $2,000-3,000 a month, there'll be a lot. If your budgets are smaller, where you're willing to pay maybe less than $1,000 a month, you might have to go and try and find individual consultants or contractors who can help, and they're also advertising on Google. In terms of, and then there's, interestingly, so I'm on this site where if you look at, there's some blogs. I mean, there's tools in the initial set, and then towards the end there are blogs. And a lot of folks who contribute to these blogs, let's say Search Engine Watch and Search Engine Land, they're contributing to blogs to make a name for themselves. I mean, those articles are pretty good. I mean, it's not anyone can just say anything. They have to pass through certain thresholds. And once they do, you can actually see if you like the content on some article, you can see who contributed. And I guarantee you, in most cases, they're selling services as well. So you can go to these blogs and see who's saying what, and do you like what they're saying. And then they probably would love to get your business because most people are doing it to make a name for themselves.
Yeah, one thing I would say here is make sure, particularly if you're small, you know what you're getting for your money. So sometimes there are services for small businesses and they say, hey, $300 or $500 a month, and we do, X number of blog posts and manage all your Facebook and your Google pages, etc. But what they're really doing is they're taking $500 a month from you, and then they're doing some one-time setup, and then they're not really doing anything beyond that. Similarly, there are, I had a friend, he's a physician in Austin, and he paid a company 2 or 3 thousand a month, and they didn't really spend all of that money on Google. They kept it as fees. So what you want to know is exactly, now that you're a little bit educated, find out exactly where are they spending your money, right? How are they spending it, and how much of it is fees versus what they're actually spending on Facebook or Google or what have you, right? And they should be able to show you that and have no issue at all with, sharing that detail, that level of granularity. And so, hopefully you can be a little bit smart about how you manage your vendor so you get the most bang for your buck. And then, I personally like to ask people, friends or friends of friends, and say, hey, have you got good success with a particular vendor? Is there someone that you like? Who have you used? Were they good? And then bring up these topics that are in this presentation to say, hey, well, how do you think about these topics? How do you think about keyword targeting? How do you think about local versus national? How do you think about services versus local businesses or e-commerce businesses? And just have them think about it a little bit, have a discussion with them, and see if they're really thinking through the issues the way we've talked about it a little bit today. And that should give you a sense for whether they're going to make good use of your money. And then you can always do a trial, right? So do a little bit of spending with them, not a ton, and just say, hey, I want to see the results, right? I want to see actual sales, and I want to be able to attribute those sales to your activities, and I want to know, if I move 10 products and I made $1,000, and I want to know that your fees weren't in excess of that, because then I'm losing money, right? So I think a trial is a great way to get started. We had another question. It said, some of my competitors' websites show up on Google, and they have 5 stars next to their website in the organic search. How can my website get a 5-star in organic search results?
Yeah, so I'm assuming that local business with a lot of reviews, Google is able to index and figure it out. So I think, again, not doing the specifics, in general, I would say if you can get reviews, and there are sites, there's a site called Trustpilot as well that generate reviews. You can get those reviews to show up on Google. But I think what your competition has done in this case is gone out there to review the sites, and you probably like might do the same thing.
Yeah, and it says, any input on mobile device advertising?
Mobile device. I'm going to just talk about it for Google and Facebook. Google, you can do a lot of mobile advertising. The way it works, if you want to do only mobile advertising, you can do that as well. But the way it usually works is you put your ads, your keywords in Google, and then you can say that on mobile devices, I don't want to pay as much. I want to pay 50% less per click, or 50% more per click, whatever. So Google AdWords UI allows you to do that. And the Google AdWords UI also allows you to change your ad copy for mobile, because mobile you may want to say something else. Right? Maybe you have an app and you want to promote that app. So obviously you want your ad copy on mobile to be different, and that is there. The functionality is there in AdWords. So you can definitely do mobile advertising. It's just as easy. It's in the AdWords UI. And Facebook is actually even more about mobile, because these days a lot of usage is on mobile on Facebook. I mean, I personally use desktop when I go to Facebook, but a lot of people use the Facebook app, right? It's sitting in your smartphone devices. So you can definitely advertise on Facebook as well. There, keep in mind that there is only newsfeed. Like, there is no right-hand column. Here you see in fact, mobile newsfeed is where you can advertise on Facebook. And you can turn these other two off. Just keep in mind that there is no mobile right column. If you advertise on Facebook on mobile, it's only in the newsfeed.
Yeah, just one cautionary tale here. Mobile, although it's about half or more of search traffic and a lot of Facebook traffic, it tends not to convert into money for a business. And so you have to be very careful how you bid on mobile traffic. In fact, what I would do and suggest is to turn off the mobile option to start with on your first set of ads. The second thing I would suggest, and just going out on a limb, giving a little more advice here, I would suggest if you do start mobile ads, really reduce your bids. You can actually do what's called a mobile bid adjustment, and you can reduce the bid on the mobile ad, and then you want to monitor that mobile ad separately um, and make sure that it's converting at a rate. So you want to track your conversions, make sure that the mobile set of your ads are actually converting at a rate that you're happy with before you scale that up. Because one of the two big ways Google makes a lot of money off of people is one, defaulting to broad match keywords. So, instead of sweater, you're advertising on every article of clothing potentially in your closet, right? Which is not what you want. And then the second thing is you're going to be advertising on mobile, which is great for them, but probably bad for you. And so I just be really really cautious about how you advertise using mobile, because it sometimes is very difficult to convert that traffic. So really think through that.
We have technically about 10 minutes left. I know we are losing a few people, so not much. So we'll hang around as long as there are questions. But before we get into more questions, as people are signing out, I just want to let everyone know that if there is a desire to go deeper into any of the broad over, or if there's a desire to go deeper into any of the sections, we can do that with follow-up webinars, whether it's paid search or organic search or local or Facebook. Just let us know. And then
Yeah,
as we are signing off, that's fine.
Yeah, we have a few minutes left. There's some good questions here. Maybe we'll just try to answer as many as we can. You talked about local listing with Google, Yahoo, or Bing, and I'd argue Google is really your main target here.
Yep.
What if I only have an online business? Is there a listing for online businesses?
So online businesses are not national. They're not global. So the local piece doesn't fit in there. You still want to do paid search at a national or worldwide level, depending on what business you are. Think of e-commerce, right, where you're shipping across the US. There's no concept of local businesses or local maps. There it's all about the more general SEO we talked about, organic search. And then the paid search is again very similar. You'd advertise across the whole country, but no local listing needed. Now, the one exception I'll say to that is if you have a national business with branches. So think about, I'll just make this up, Nordstrom, right? It's a national business, but it's a national business based on a bunch of local outlets, right? There's probably a Nordstrom within 25 miles of where everyone in the US lives, maybe, right? I don't know. But that is a little bit different because that you could still add, you could still, if you want, have a different. I don't know if Nordstrom has done this, using them as an example. You could have a local listing for every city you are in, and then still advertise across the whole country with a local listing for every branch in every city that you're in. So you can do that, and that's the example where you have a national business with a lot of local branches. Hello?
You're muted. Sorry, did you hear me there?
No, I didn't, Ali.
Sorry, someone's muting me. It says, can you guys talk about schema markup? How important is it for organic search? And so, I think broadly speaking, there are a bunch of things that you can do HTML markup wise, tagging wise, and maybe talk a little bit about that and how important that is. I know we spoke on it a little bit, but this is a detailed question.
Yeah, it's a advanced question for SEO, but it works. And in fact, there's a couple of ways you can do that. If you're interested, you can do it to your site, or if you're like, and that will get you across Google, Yahoo, Bing. But for Google only, those of you who have Google, what used to be called Webmaster Tools, and now it's called Search Console, you can do it without changing your site in Google Search Console, and that gets you to Google as well. It is important for the more long tail searches, right? So for instance, I mean, there's a lot of attributes you can use schema.org, and there's rich text snippets and all this. But think of an example where you have a product that is priced at $7, and you can put that. You may not have the $7 price very visible, but you can put that as an attribute in your schema.org, and that becomes an attribute on which essentially you're giving Google more information so that they can rank you better for terms that are more relevant. And it's a little bit more advanced, but uh, once once you've got all the low-hanging fruit, it's certainly something that you should do to get more bang for the buck.
An interesting question here. Is there a way that startups who target a specific city to provide services to show their ads only in those cities, even though they don't have a physical address in those cities?
So if they don't have a physical address in that, and you're not looking for foot traffic, then you can certainly advertise on Google only on those cities. Uh, you may not be able to get a local listing because if you don't have a physical address, you're not going to be able to get a local listing. But you could still show up in national SEO, let's say national organic search, and you can certainly advertise in just that city. AdWords gives you the ability to target your searches to people who are residing in specific cities. Now, of course, the implication there is when someone clicks your link, whether it's in paid search or organic search, they'll come to your site and you'll be able to service them without having a local branch in that city.
Great. Someone's asking about, hey, can we do an example of a convenience store, dollar store, smoke shop? It's a big segment of the Jamaat we know. So maybe can you talk through any specific tips or ideas or concepts? Maybe the local listings are the most important. And we talked a little bit about maybe de-emphasizing Facebook for, convenience stores, but maybe talk through that a little bit.
Right, convenience store.
Convenience store.
I picked one that is relatively smoke shop, right? Because I suspect because the product is very product, and I suspect there are some searches going on Google where people are looking for smoke shops in their area. So certainly, um, advertising on the search smoke shops and then limiting it to, let's say, 10 miles radius around your list, around where your business is, could work well. You may not get a lot of volume because how many people are searching for smoke shop within 10 miles of where your business is, right? But there might be some volume, and if there is, it could be profitable because they're searching for exactly what you're providing. So I think that's how that part could work. Convenience store, you could do it two ways. People may search for convenience stores, and again, you buy the search term convenience stores, advertise, have a website, bring people to your website, and talk about your convenience store. The other way you could do is you could advertise on keywords that are product related to what you're selling. So maybe you're selling a specific kind of shampoo, I don't know, right? And maybe someone is searching for that shampoo online, and they happen to be 10 miles within where your convenience store is. So you could do it that way as well. In all of these cases, you have to, if you're thinking about search, you have to think about what people may be searching for that are relevant to your business. And you can use the tools that we referred to earlier, including the Google Speak keyword tool, to see how many people are searching. And then, because your business is it's a local business, you could say, I want my ads to show only to people who are in that area within 10 miles or within 25 miles of my business.
Yeah, there's another question here. Says, hey, I'm a wholesaler, and I want to target retailers. What should I do? And are there some general advice? I think that's a really interesting case study. Maybe talk a bit about that.
Right. So is the question more related to retailers, Ali?
No, so if you think about it, there are a bunch of wholesalers that are targeting retailers, right, for resale. So
Oh,
it's a
so
bit
it's a
more
business to
B2B,
business
right?
question.
But I think it's a common situation, right, where if you think about our Jamaat, I think there are a lot of people in retail, but there's also people that have migrated in the value chain and now sit slightly upstream and sell to retailers, whether it's,
Right.
direct products or something else.
Right. So this is a more, if you're selling to retailers as a wholesaler, it's a more business to business concept, and there are a couple of ways to think about it. One is, are these retailers, and since we're talking about online channels and we're talking about search and LinkedIn and Facebook, are these retailers searching for you know, searching for wholesalers within that business, right? So I know, I mean, the only example I can think of is because I've been involved with this way back when, is there was a wholesaler selling LED lights, literally LED lights, and they were selling to retailers, retailers not being individuals who wanted LED lights in their homes, but retailers were like parking constructions who were wanting to put LED lights throughout their three floors parking construction. So it was a business to business around LED lights, right? So then you have to think about what are these retailers interested in? And in this example, certainly you could advertise on LED lights, keeping in mind that, hey, your ads will show to anyone who searches on LED lights. And at that point, you don't know whether they're a retailer or whether they're an end consumer. But of course, once someone clicks your ad and comes to your site, you could, and a little bit information in the ad copy as well, but certainly more on your site. That look, we're a wholesaler, we're selling to retailers who are interested in LED lights, right? That's one way you could do it. Facebook will be harder, especially because it's a business to business rather than business to consumer setting. LinkedIn may be something you might want to try. Again, depending on exactly what the wholesaler to retailer details are, LinkedIn may or may not work. It may work to some extent. There may not be scale and all those things. But one has to think through what the specifics are. Where do I find these people? Are they searching on Google? Can I easily target them on LinkedIn? And if the answer to any of that is yes, great. And but the answer may be no. It's hard. I mean, some of this is very um, relationship-oriented businesses, and maybe you just can't get them online. But you have to one just has to think through that.
Yeah, and just one comment, because we see a lot of different sites, and in general, B2B, unless you're doing small or medium-sized business targeting, you may end up, if you think about the web is predominantly consumers and smaller businesses, but even small businesses is probably a small segment of web traffic relative to the consumer market. And so what ends up happening is you may end up with a lot of leads, but they are going to tend to skew smaller, right? And so if you're really targeting bigger businesses, you have to be willing to think through, well, I may get 100 leads a month, but maybe only one or two are interesting. And in some cases, that's, too many to screen, right? Or maybe you say, hey, I don't mind. I'm willing to kiss 98 frogs to get two great customers. And so, I would always advise a trial, but just be aware that sometimes that's what happens, that you end up with, a lot of leads or a lot of irrelevant leads. And sometimes that's frustrating for businesses. Or they haven't really done the math. They get a lot of leads, so they think they're getting a lot of traction with Google, but only when you really boil it down, it's not a very effective channel. That, there's other ways, maybe direct mail and calling and visiting retailers and your customers is a better way to advertise to them, or trade journals, trade shows, conferences. Maybe those are just better channels for you. And the web is not going to be a great channel or too time consuming just because it yields too many leads. We're kind of wrapping up here, Nader.
All right.
All right. Yeah. There's a bunch of comments about managing, getting in touch with us, and whether we could work with folks. And I think, we're here to serve, the IPN community. So if there's interest, we can set up another session. We can make it more specific, or we can have kind of a national dialogue, and do another webinar that's more just discussion oriented. All things are possible. Feel free to give feedback to your local IPN coordinators, etc. And we're happy to do another session, as Nader said.
Yeah, and I wanted to,
Yeah, and I
we
wanted.
hang around for questions, and I just wanted to thank everyone. It's been a really great turnout, and even though we were in the question section, we didn't lose. I mean, we lost a few folks, but most of you guys hung around, and I thank you. I mean, it's been a great turnout, and even though to me at least, I've talked a lot, Ali's talked a lot, and the questions have come in over chat, so it didn't feel like we were having a conversation from that perspective. But obviously, a lot of great questions came in over chat, and thank you for all your engagement as well.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.